Going from a nonprofit founder with $0 up through being able to work full time for the nonprofit that you started is no easy feat. If you've missed my past interviews and stories featuring Preston Ross, the founder of Great Raleigh Cleanup, now's your chance to catch up in this full interview. We're going to cover how he got started with the organization, how he grew it over time, and how he even got a contract with the city for $500,000 to propel one of his most inspiring programs. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. You can catch the full interview starting now. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a social impact YouTuber, social entrepreneur, and nonprofit founder. And I make these videos because I want to help accelerate social change by equipping you with all the information tools you need to do that. Whether that's through starting a nonprofit or a social enterprise or socially conscious business or getting out there and just doing good as a volunteer or activist or advocate. I hope you find this video interesting and helpful, and check out the rest of the videos on my channel. Okay, let's go meet Preston. Hey Preston, how are you?
Hey Amber, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I am excited to dive a little deeper into all about your journey from founder to doing the work that you're doing. Is I think full-time, part-time?
It's full time. Has been
Full-time.
for about a year and a half.
Wow. Okay, we're going to get into how we've arrived here and all that good stuff. So I'd like to just kind of start with, who are you? What is your organization? Who do you serve? What do you do?
My name is Preston Ross. I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called the Great Raleigh Cleanup. Um, our mission is to ensure litter-free neighborhoods for all through building community. If you had asked me 2 years ago what our mission would be, I would have said to pick up litter. But it has become much more than that. And our tagline is community and impact, because community comes first. The impact comes second, and it's something that we want, but it's about community.
You know, in past videos, I've talked about when you're starting an organization, really understanding the need that you're trying to address. So think back to Preston. How many years ago did you start?
Almost four.
Almost 4 years ago. Preston, 4 to 5 years ago. How did you go about understanding the need that prompted you to start Great Raleigh Cleanup?
I think it just came out of the understanding that as the city grew, there would be more people and more stuff. And I just noticed that there was more litter than there had ever been. When I had moved to Raleigh, what is now 24 years ago, it was like, in many ways, like a utopia. And obviously, it began to change. And I just noticed that I've always had this sustainable heart and this desire to do things environmentally focused. But in a lot of cases, it takes a lot of education, sometimes a lot of money. But I was like, hey, I can pick up some litter. That's easy. And foolishly, I thought that if I went to a place and picked up litter one time, that'd be the only time I'd have to go. Quickly realized that that's not how it worked. But it all really came out of just this desire to just do something. I think I've always been a person that wants to do something. That's like Shirley Chisholm said, that's like me paying my rent for my time on this earth. So it really just started out of that, just to do something. Just I had no idea what it would become, but it really was just to do something.
That's a great quote, too. Talk to me a little bit more about your market research process. How did you go about understanding sort of this landscape, this ecosystem of organizations doing what you did and all that?
I think I was introduced to it through social media, just seeing large organizations, for example, Ocean Cleanup and For Ocean, who do this type of work on a much, much larger scale out in the middle of the ocean. And I think that might have been one of the things that inspired me to do it. And before I started Great Raleigh Cleanup, I tried to find other groups, and there were, just like Google search Raleigh litter or whatever. And there were some folks, but they hadn't posted in 2 years. I sent out some direct messages and was never responded to. So at that point, I just kind of took it upon myself. I was like, well, I guess these other groups aren't doing it. I'll give it a shot. I'll try and see what I can come up with. And that's how it came to be. But I absolutely looked out to see who was already doing the work before I began, and there was just no one locally doing it.
I know now you have multiple ways people can participate, multiple programs, you might say. Talk to me about what was your very first program and how did it evolve?
It was our volunteer litter cleanups. I posted it on a site called meetup.com, which I had just been familiar with through some other things. And I remember I posted it, our first event. It was me and my partner at the time. One other person signed up but didn't show up. And, if you do anything with volunteering, you recognize that when people sign up, that does not mean they're going to show up. But it was I figured, hey, maybe this would be something that I do once a month. Maybe I get 2 or 3 people out. We'll see what happens. And in about our fourth or fifth event, in about 3 months, there were like 26 people. Something here. This is going to be a little bit bigger than I anticipated.
I love that. I don't think I knew this before, but you just said one person showed up to your first meetup.
It was me and my partner. Yes.
So technically nobody showed up. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. The person that signed up didn't show up. But by our second event, which was, if I remember, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, we went from she and I to, I think it were 4 of us or 5 of us. So it quickly like started to gain momentum. And I always say 2 turned into 4, 4 turned into 8, into 13, and then 26, and almost just kept doubling. It just like literally kept up.
I love that. And when I think about why that worked, what comes to mind is this idea of like social proof. People see other people involved and they think, oh, there must be something here. So they try it out. I mean, was that your experience?
I think so, because people will always ask me, like, what's your biggest reach and marketing arm? And I always say word of mouth. But like I said, when I went into it, I didn't really have this idea of community, but it showed itself very quickly. I mean, because I started this in the middle of the pandemic, and we know what that time was like as far as people and isolation and so much heartbreak and depression during that time. And I think I gave people a reason to be outside. I gave people a reason to be together. And I didn't know that people, maybe I didn't truly recognize that people needed that, but I quickly realized it was like, oh yeah, we clean up litter, but we're friends. We're relationships were being built and friendships were being built and that kind of stuff. It happened very quickly.
That's one of the things I've always loved about volunteering and nonprofit work is I think you're right. You are achieving a mission, an outcome, right? For you, it's clean streets, no more litter, environmental awareness, all of that. But what I've always thought the social impact world is really giving people is purpose and connection, right? And that's like a secondary outcome of the work that we don't always acknowledge and talk about very much.
Well, will give me purpose. So it's not just about, the volunteers or the people I employ or whatever. It literally gives me purpose. Like it gets me, I always say, it gets me out of my head for a little while. When I'm doing this work, it's just about the work at that moment. Whether that's 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, whatever. I'm about this work. I'm about this service to the planet, to the people. And so, I could say that I did it for others and it gives them purpose, but it 1000% gives me purpose, which is something I greatly need.
I know when I was doing my nonprofit work, one thing that was really important to me was knowing that things were working, that I was actually making a difference. And because if I wasn't doing something that was effective, I wanted to know so that I could pivot and adjust and tweak things until the impact was being made. So talk to me a little bit more about how do you measure and track your success? How do you know your programs are making a difference?
Well, I was and still am very big into the numbers, the metrics of how many pounds of litter we've picked up or how many bags of litter we've picked up, which now is upwards of 130,000 or 13,000 bags. The fact that we've had over 1,500 different volunteers join us, excuse me, and the volunteer hours and things like that. So, like, I love the numbers. I still appreciate the numbers, but if I'm being honest, I think one of the ways that like I know it's working is, and I'll show you this photo. This is a picture of Zoya Namula. Her mom and dad met at a Great Raleigh Cleanup event in 2021. So I'm not saying they wouldn't have met outside of that, but that's just one of many stories of friendships, relationships. I think that might be the greatest story because obviously a child was born out of it. But that's how I know it's working because two people showed up, fell in love, had a baby. I have other people who like are in relationships and friendships being built and hang out, all because, like I always say, one day I decided to go out and pick up some litter. So, these different lives are touched and changed, and that's how I know it's working.
It's like a ripple effect. And as an aside, this is random, but volunteering really is a great way to meet someone. I know at one of our projects, we had people meet and get married later. And then we actually had someone propose to someone else at one of our projects too, like
Nice.
back in the day. And so you're absolutely right. Um, if you're single and looking, go
Yeah.
volunteer because you will
So
find someone who shares your interests and your values. And that's what's most
absolutely.
important. Just saying.
Yes.
Okay, so something amazing happened recently, right? You got a pretty great contract with the city of Raleigh. Can you tell me more about what the contract entails, the program that it's supporting? I guess we'll have to backtrack a little bit and talk more about the program that you developed that the city is funding too.
So the city just funded for the next 5 years a program that's called the Workforce, and the Workforce is simply a program I started that employs unhoused members of Raleigh to help us with litter cleanup, help us with beautification projects. This program came out of the fact that although our volunteer efforts were absolutely crushing it, thousands and thousands of pounds of litter removed, I wanted more. And but my weekends were already full with volunteer events, and I was like, who is available to help me during the week in the morning to get out there and get more litter? And I had a relationship with Maggie Kane, who runs a place at the table. It's a pay what you can cafe, and many members of her community are unhoused. So I just brought it to her. I was like, Maggie, do you think the people who come in and volunteer with you to get food might be interested in working with me and helping me clean up litter? She said yes. October of 2023, I went to city council. I had a relationship with a city council person just from our volunteer efforts and the impact we had made there. City council gave us seed funding to see if the program worked. It ran for about 5 months. It was exceptional. They saw the impact it was having on the city, but more importantly, the lives of these persons, these humans that were participating in it. It came together all a bunch of different departments. When you hear the city gave you money, it's like no, it's like got a little bit from this department, a little bit from stormwater, a little bit from solid waste, a little bit here, there. So anyway, it ultimately ended up being a nearly $500,000 contract over 5 years. So we get to continue um, doing this program and employing these persons who need it. And just some of the stories you hear are heartbreaking, but then when they tell you what they can do with the money that they earn, and I just know, even if they don't say it directly, I know it makes them feel good to be back to work and to be of use to the community and things like that.
What an innovative model. And I like to call that a creative collaboration. It's like unexpected ideas coming together and
Yeah.
through the power of partnership. So that's amazing. I know folks who are watching this might be wondering, how do you work with your local government? How do you partner with them and potentially even get support like this? So I want to kind of reverse engineer this with you and learn more about what are some of the top questions that other nonprofit founders or leaders should think about to determine first whether a partnership with their city or county government would be a good thing for them?
I think the first question you might want to ask is, would your city care about what your mission is? Um, you know, in most cases, the nonprofit work that we do, the work that we do, is has a positive societal impact. But you honestly have to ask yourself, does the city care? And in my case, does the city care about the unhoused population? Yes. Does the city care about litter in the city? Yes. So check and check. But you have to make sure that um, your mission aligns with the city, the county, whatever it may be, because there are things that we do and we want support for. It's not that the city doesn't care, but it's not like quote unquote in their budget. This is not something we'd love for you to do it and champion your cause, but if it doesn't quite align with um if it doesn't quite align with what they feel they can invest in, you might not get their support. And in all honesty, I think with my workforce program, I don't think that litter is like a budget line for the city. I don't think it's like they don't have like the and in their strategic plan or whatever. I'm not 100% sure that the word litter shows up, but impacting the unhoused population obviously is important. You can meld those things together and you can support my mission and you get kind of like a two for one. You get this work that I'm already doing and then you get to support this population that needs it most. And I think from a city perspective, it's like one thing a municipality perspective, one thing you have to be okay with is like, hey, I'm gonna do the work, but their name is gonna be on it. Like if that's
Mm.
something you have a problem with, then you might not have the best relationship with a city, county, state, whatever. So going forward, once we sign this contract in the next couple of days, to do meet the workforce sponsored by the city of Raleigh. I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue with that. I still that if that's all you're asking for me, and you're gonna give me $500,000 to do it, I'm down. I'm down. Like, and we'll see how the program unfolds and how the working relationships evolves. But if that's all that the city is asking, I think I'm good with it. But like I said in the beginning, you have to make sure that what you're working on is something that the city can say we can invest in. That it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care, but it's just politics and stuff. It has to line up with something that they can invest in.
I want to point out a couple things that you said that I thought were really interesting. So, when you're talking about matching it up with what the city cares about first, that's just like any other funder. We've talked about grant writing, we've talked about how to get sponsors and other videos. And in those videos, it's all about lining up with the same values and issues that those people care about. So,
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You talked about knowing if it was in their budget, and you mentioned a strategic plan. I know that city and county governments often have like a multi-year plan on what they hope to achieve for the city or county government. Would you say if someone just looks up those plans for their cities, is that a good way to understand what issues might align with what you're working on?
It is for some, but I'll be honest with me. I'm all about relationships. If you tell me, hey, hop online and read here, I'm like, that's probably not gonna happen. But who can I buy coffee for? Who can I buy a drink for? And just kind of chat. And who can I invite to volunteer with me so they can kind of get a better understanding of what I do, what our processes are. So it depends on the person, but yeah, there are a lot of people who can deep dive into the city's and their plans, their write ups, whatever, and find the information they need. But then there's also people like me who just like, I just want to have a conversation with you. Just like, let me know. Don't count on me to like read and figure it out. Let's just have a conversation about it and see what's what.
And maybe it's all of that, right? So maybe you
Yeah.
just start with, or also look at the strategic plan just so you can become familiar with what the city or county is working on. But I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right. Relationships are everything. And I believe I heard you say that the city came to you for this partnership. Is that correct? Can you tell me more how that happened?
Well, I guess they did come to me with the large contract, but I did ask them for the seed funding. But that only worked after I had done 3+ years of volunteer work and had proven myself. And one of the reasons that makes our workforce program so successful is that I didn't have to learn a new task. I already know how to pick up trash. I know how to dispose of it. I know how to do that properly. I just had to learn how to pay people and some financial stuff, but I already knew the base. I know how the safety protocol. I know what supplies I need. I knew all of that stuff because I did the work for so long through with my volunteers that at that point it was just give me some new people. I had to talk to an accountant. What's the best way to pay them? A lot of the folks who work with me don't have a permanent residence. They don't have all of the resources you might think you need. So I'm like, what is it that what's the easiest way for me to do this legally and to make sure we're covered, but to get these folks some money? So that was a conversation I had. It was never a conversation of, well, so what do you do? How do you pick up litter? How do we be safe? How do we just, no, I already knew that. I already knew
Yeah.
that. I don't know a lot, but I know that. So it was just, how do we expand it to a new community?
We want to be careful not to chase the money, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so stick to our mission, stay focused on the outcomes that we're trying to achieve and find the funders who align with that versus don't make up
Yes.
programs to just get a grant or just get a contract.
No.
I think
Can I
that's really,
speak to the money? Is that okay?
yeah, please. Tell me all about that. Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to talk about. I was in a sustainability summit recently, and the moderator said something that's like, "Okay, now let's talk about like the dirty money." And I was like, "No, it's not dirty." I tell people all the time, for my first 3 years of doing the work with the Great Valley Cleanup, even when I started getting a small salary, I was like, "Man, I can't believe that I get to do this and people pay me and this that." And then one day, I think it's when the workforce kind of started rolling. I woke up and I knew my value. Like one day I just woke up. It wasn't like gradual. One day I woke up and was like, I deserve to be paid more than I get paid because, like, who else is doing it? Find somebody else who can do it. Like you won't. I have members of my workforce who, if you started the same program tomorrow, they'd be like, nah, I kind of like working for Preston. I knew my value, and it's okay to know your value. It's like it's not illegal, and like that person was like, "It's dirty money." I'm like, "It's not dirty." I have a buddy who runs a nonprofit called the Gifted Arts, and he's been doing it for about 2 years. And he told me he was like, "Don't be afraid of going to get the money because nobody is going to do the good work with it that you do." And when he told me that, and it started to like resonate with me, I started to understand that it's okay to know your value. And I use this little phrase that I say, I showed you what I can do with a dime. Now let me show you what I can do with a dollar. So
Ooh, I like that. That's really
yeah,
catchy. I like that. And, thinking about the big picture of what you said in that conversation around, nonprofit compensation, and there's such a
yeah,
dialogue about that in the sector right now. But I like to think of the big picture of I would rather have lots of people who are doing good and benefiting society and helping others and solving social problems. And I would rather pay them fairly and make sure that they can continue the work on a professional and skilled level while being able to pay
yeah,
their mortgage. I would rather that happen than have them do some job that isn't helpful to society or that
yeah,
actively harms society.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important for other people who might be considering starting a nonprofit or who are working on building an organization to understand and to hear from you. I know from talking to lots of different nonprofit founders, everyone sort of starts at a different place, different level of education or no education on the subject at all. And I want to kind of hear from you when you were just getting started with Great Raleigh Cleanup. What were some of the things you realized you needed to train yourself on or learn, or what did you come in already knowing or having been trained on that you think was helpful?
As far as the work, no prior knowledge, but I learned that rather quickly. As far as running a nonprofit, not a single solitary piece of knowledge about it, like none. Milan. I didn't even actually when I first incorporated us, I incorporated us as an LLC because I thought you had to be an LLC before you could be a nonprofit. Just a miscommunication. So like, even when I got our 501c3 status, it was private foundation because they asked the question of who funds the organization, and at the time it was me. So it made it sound like oh some rich funder. It was like no. So like I had so you're gonna make errors, but I leaned on other executive directors in the community, in the city, just ask questions. I watched a lot of your videos, like especially some of those early videos were like, especially about board and stuff, where it's just like eye opening. Um, but it was just like a lot of conversations, and you can get some books and stuff. But like I said, I'm more of a YouTube guy, so just went on and just try to collect as much information um, as possible because we have a passion for this mission and the work that we do, but I don't necessarily know who has a passion for running a nonprofit because that's just like running a business, and it is
Yeah.
hard. I tell people all the time. They ask me what's the hardest part about running a nonprofit, and I say run the nonprofit. Like
Yep.
the work is gravy, and what I look forward to, it's finances and insurance and marketing and board management and fundraising, social media, and just like all the other stuff. But like those moments when I'm just out doing the work, it's like none of that stuff matters, but that only lasts so long, and then you have to come home and figure out the rest. So you want to be prepared, but not just in this career, but in pretty much anything I've ever done. I'm a trial by fire kind of person. So just throw me to the wolves. I kind of figure it out. There are other people that are like that, but then there are others who want to do the reading.
Yeah. And if you can find other people who know those things like nonprofit accounting and stuff, then
Yeah,
that's great because they're probably better at it than you anyway.
yeah,
Not saying that for you specifically, Preston, but maybe, I don't know.
yeah.
And then you don't have to worry about it. So finding great people, I would say that's
I
something I
would.
learned early on too.
In my case, I wouldn't say I wouldn't have to worry about it because even if you're I mean, and so much with me is about relationships. And even if you're a great nonprofit accounting, but for whatever reason we just don't connect, then it's maybe not going to work. So I still do have to worry about it. That's just my opinion on the matter. But at least I can maybe take something from you and learn and maybe find someone else and maybe have a better relationship with them. But at least we've had those conversations. Just try to take something from everyone you talk to. Even if it's, oh, I ain't never going to do that. Just take something from
Right.
everyone you talk to.
So let's talk about your growth and the fundraising stuff that I know you just said you didn't like worrying about. But as you pointed
Yeah.
out, it is
Yeah.
a real part of what we have to do as nonprofits. Talk to me about what are your top expenses now and your top sources of revenue?
Top expense for any nonprofits is to say is going to be wages, programs. People call it programs, but the fact of the matter is, it's paying people. It's the people that you pay to run the different programs and run the nonprofit. And so it's all the top expenses all excuse me is always going to be wages. I have people who with our workforce program, they've told me, they say, hey, I want to donate directly to the workforce. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, what I think they're trying to say is, hey, I want to pay the salary of the unhalf people that you employ. The fact of the matter is workforce don't happen unless I get up and get in the car. So when you say
Right.
you want to donate to the workforce starts with Preston. So just be mindful of that. And all of the other things that we do, people say, oh, I love what you do. It doesn't happen unless I like get up and make it happen. So that's something that people need to be. Until recently, until the city contract, everything that we got was individual donations because the we didn't have enough cachet for the foundations to say yes to grants. I'm not the greatest writer, so everything was individual donations. We did okay with some fundraisers, but didn't crush it, and it depends on who you ask. Different executive directors will tell you. Sometimes fundraisers are not worth the effort. It's just like,
You mean
you're spending
fundraising events?
10,000 just to make 11. So, but it was all individual donations. It was people appreciating what we do and supporting us. And now going into our fourth year with these newer programs and more notoriety within the community, we actually are starting to get a couple grants, and we do have the city contract, which is huge. But that's just a base. That's not enough to do everything. That's $100,000 a year, which is great. I probably need another $100,000 a year to do work for volunteer, continue to grow other programs. So we're actively seeking it out, but at least we have that to keep us in business, to keep the lights on.
Yeah. Sounds like you got to invest in some development staff.
Yeah, I do. We are for the first time. Just a brief history on Great Valley Cleanup. We started as a group in October of 2020. We actually didn't become a nonprofit until December of 2021. As sometimes people say, you're not a nonprofit until you get your tax status. That's debatable. But so we've actually only really been a nonprofit for like 2.5 years. And already it's like, I can't do this by myself, trying to bring some more folks in. So and you think, you got $100,000 a year. It's like, yeah, that's great, but my salary, another salary, even if it's part-time, all of the administrative costs, supplies, fleet expenses. It's like, we got to get more. We got to get more. And then, like I
Yeah,
said, the more money we get, the more positive impact we have.
that's right. Imagine if you had some help.
Yes.
We talked about building your organization up and starting to get in some individual donations and traction. And now you have this contract with the city and a couple of grants, which congratulations. And I know that you've been doing this work full time as executive director for, you said about a year. Is that correct?
I mean, when you say full time, a lot of people, do you mean full time pay or full time hours? Because if you say full time hours, it's been 4 years, but full time pay, maybe a year, even though I think that I probably should be making a little bit more than I'm making. I'm probably about to with the city contract, but yeah, for about a year, I'd say, quote unquote, full time work, livable wage. I
That's
would
really,
use the term.
yeah. So 3 years to build it up, unpaid, working as full time executive director, unpaid.
Yeah.
Now you're paid. So I've talked about in other videos how you get to this point and clarifying that when you become a paid executive director, it's about negotiating with your board of directors on that salary because your board is your boss, right? They decide what your salary is going to be. They vote on the budget that contains your salary. Talk to me about what it was like to talk through this with your board and arrive at being able to be compensated for the work that you're doing.
I have to say, and I'm not the only executive director who's done this, but when you start a nonprofit and you need a board, you usually, in most cases, you lean on the people you know, and those were my friends. And when we first started, they were, as they are now, still to today, they were all about supporting Preston and just kind of helping me figure out. And I don't think any of us knew what we were doing. I think of my initial 5 board members, maybe one had prior nonprofit board experience. We were just figuring it out. And then when it did come to talking about budgets and things like that, um, it was kind of, we had to wait for some money to come in before we even entertain the thought of me, getting a salary. But when it started to come in, it was like, hey, um, I think some of this should kind of go my way. Obviously, we have supplies and things like that, but we have a surplus, and where it needs to go to the programs, and the programs is the person running that. So we agreed that, we brought in $25,000 for a year. Maybe I can make $1,000 a month, and that number just kind of increased. Whenever you, in my opinion, and others could disagree, but whenever you're creating a budget, especially in the beginning, it is just a guessing game. I wouldn't even, be honest, I wouldn't
Yeah.
even say in just the beginning. I mean, we're almost 4 years old, and it's still in some cases like, let's put this number on the budget and see if it holds up. And then, 6 months in, you're like, either we need to adjust this number up, or this number could come down and we can allocate these funds elsewhere.
By the way, that's not even like a living wage, so we need to work on that for you. But Preston's well, I really appreciate your time sharing your founder story and providing some tips to other people who are thinking about going on this journey like you. So, thank you again. Thank you, as always, Preston, for the great work that you're doing. I'd love to hear what you thought about Preston's full story here. And if any of you are doing similar work with litter pickups or environmental awareness, share that in the comments. It'd be cool to build a little community around the issues that all of you amazing founders are tackling. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, Changemaker Mondays. The link to do that is below this video, as always, and you're not going to want to miss it because we do actionable tips on how to start a nonprofit, how to fundraise, how to make an impact, how to grow your programs, all of that good stuff to equip you as change makers to accelerate your impact. I hope that you found this helpful and entertaining. Don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel, and I will see you next time.